Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christie, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. I have a fabulous guest with me today. Dalmo Cirne is our new best friend. And guess what? He's lots of things. He's an author. He's a leadership expert. He's a father. He's a systems thinker. He's a twin dad, like I'm a twin mom. He's an app builder. He's a guitar player, but he is not a singer. As a matter of fact, they take up collections to make sure he is not a singer. And he has jumped from a perfectly good airplane, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And today he's our guest on Productive Joy. Welcome, Dalmo.
I'm so happy to be here, Christie, and that was the most amazing introduction I've ever had.
Aren't they cringeworthy though? I actually had a chance to speak yesterday in front of a group, and I wrote my own introduction, and it was only like 2 sentences because I just hate it when they start listing all these things and you're like, yeah, I don't think anybody cares. And it was still too long. Like it's one of those that you're just cringing inside. So I wanted it to be a little more fun. I hope it was.
It was. I loved it.
Good. Well, and people are here because they want a little more productive joy, and they're only going to listen for a short amount of time before they totally dive in because you're amazing. So what would you say to them in like 30 seconds that would get them excited about this episode?
Oh, this episode is about learning how to become an effective leader, because many people aren't, or most people would say they're not prepared to be in a position of leadership. Contrary to the Peter principle that says that you get promoted to your level of incompetence, that doesn't add up, because you spent your whole life being competent. You don't wake up one fine day and decide, I'm going to be incompetent from now on. It's a better explanation to know that I'm unprepared for that situation, right? But being unprepared, that's a solvable problem. Being incompetent is a much harder problem to work with. Being unprepared is a solvable problem, right? Let's work on that, landing to those leadership positions and being effective in doing that, being successful in doing that.
I love it. Okay, so being unprepared is solvable. I think that we could probably camp out there for a couple days and talk about some things. But how did you end up here? So you help leaders figure out how to do leadership well and right, but you can't really do that unless you've been a leader yourself. So why don't you give us the Cliff Note version of what got you to the point where you're coaching others and helping others figure out this leadership thing?
Exactly. The journey begins with me as an individual contributor who had made the transition into management. And guess what? I was struggling. Like everyone before me, or many before me, I didn't know what to do. But with being an engineer and coming up with ideas, you think, oh, how hard can it be, right? And little did I know it was much, much harder than my original idea. But even before going there, I was asking myself, did someone solve that problem? Did someone come up, or many people come up and address the problem? And I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, right? They say wisdom comes with age. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. But what really put me into that path is everywhere I looked, if it was a book, if it was talking with colleagues and people more experienced than I, is that all solutions, and that became a pet peeve of mine, is pretty much all solutions out there, they come up with a book, and the book, they insert a story over there. Each chapter is a different story. And those stories are very compelling. They're beautiful stories. They are about a unicorn that craved lollipops and didn't have a rainbow. And everyone loves that. And you finish this story and you're like, wow, that was so wonderful. But guess what? It doesn't amount to anything. You feel good, but it doesn't make you any better. Those stories are fillers. You never go back to read those stories, and worse, you never connect the dots to apply those stories to your own life, because unless you have the same life experiences as the authors of those books or this advice, you don't know how to make those connections because it's so personal. I took a different approach. What if the framework, instead of having filler stories, had practical examples, things that you can finish reading that section and apply that very day, right? It is the kind of book for you to keep on your desk as reference material, not on the bookshelf, right? So much so that I use the book to reference and say, oh, how do you do that status report again? I'll go back and I wrote the book and I keep referencing the book. And so it is that kind of material. And that's why it is so different from everything else that is out there, is the explanatory knowledge that comes with a book. Here's what and why and when and how you do things. In those practical examples that you can apply to real life, because those are not made up stories. No, those are things real, derived from my experience working with clients, others that I have seen that. So that is condensed in the book, right? That's what makes this work. It's a decade in the making. It is special.
It sounds like it. And we're going to talk more about it in just a second. But you may or may not realize that what you've created is a way to make learning stick. That's actually the name of my book, is Learning Can Stick. And I'm an educator by trade. So I have spent my entire career teaching people things. And what you've done with your book is you have created a roadmap that people can see themselves in, therefore utilize. When we don't see ourselves in the examples or in the structure of the chapters, then we skip over them, or we say, oh, that's nice, butterflies and bubbles over there, right? Or unicorns and lollipops. But we're going to leave those over there, and I need something practical. But you knew that. You instinctively knew that people weren't going to be able to utilize something that wasn't practical to them. So that's the first thing. The second thing I noticed is that you made the reader the hero of your story, meaning if you are the hero of the book, of the story, as the author, that's all fine and good, but you've left your entire audience behind. You need them to be the hero, and you're the guide on the side who's giving them ideas on how they should do things, right?
Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with you.
Okay, so well done. Now let's dive in. Tell us the name of the book and who would want to pick it up. Like who is this written for?
Absolutely. Before I tell the name of the book, and I know you're dying to know it, I'm going to tell you, but I have to introduce why it is called what it is called.
Okay, I love it. I love a good title with a story.
The work you do as a manager, as a leader, it has a constant flow of activities coming to you and coming from you to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that flow is constant. That is kind of similar to a perennial river where the water is constantly flowing in that river, right? But in leadership, you're not just going in one direction. There are several directions where you have to work, and the streams happen in all those directions. A core framework that I'm proposing identifies 4 different directions. You have yourself, and I call it the reservoir. You have downstream, where you manage your team, your project, and operations. You have upstream, where you're managing your manager. You're not telling them what to do, but there's so much communication that breaks down historically, but now you have a framework to make those communications take place and be effective. Last but not least, you have Sidestream, where you are working with your peers. For example, a product needs to have a message to go to market. You're working with the marketing team. How are you going to demo with the sales team? How are you going to ensure compliance with the legal team, right? So you're working it takes a village to do that.
Yeah.
So when you put the analogy of the flow and with the river and those four directions, there is only one title possible for the book. It is called The Four Streams of Leadership.
It's pretty perfect. And I can visually see it, right? But there's a subtitle. I would love for you to add the subtitle in there because I just think it's fun.
Yes, to turn yourself into an overachieving manager. Because the overachieving is you know what you're doing, right? Many mistakes comes from being in an uncharted waters, is not knowing what to do. If you know what the expectations of the job are and you know how to perform those tasks, the chances of you making a mistake are severely reduced. You can still make mistakes. We are all humans, but it's going to be very rare, right? It's going to be very seldom and far in between.
Yeah.
That you're going to make mistakes because you have mastery of your topic, mastery of your craft, right? In the book, it speaks to perhaps, even though four, I don't have anything special about the number four, but it speaks to four core audiences. The first audience are individual contributors who are transitioning into management. You realize the skills are different, expectations are different. It is a new job. It requires a whole new set of skills. You have a place to learn and sharpen your skills in the book. The second audience are newly minted managers. You are managing, you may have created some framework for you that may be working, but you still see it falling short here and there. You know that you don't have everything figured out yet, or is over optimized only for that company, only for those situations. The third audience are managers of managers. And you want to enable your team, you want to prepare your team to work better, to be more effective. It's a way for you to train. Whether you are in a startup, there's pretty much no budget, no structure for you to train your people. In larger companies, they do have a budget, they do have training, but it's usually overfit for that company, right? It works for that company, not so much in other situations. Last but not least, students, people who are in a career where they want to go into leadership and management, but they want to go beyond academic coursework. They want to know how to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
So those are the four core audiences, but there are those who self-select, and I don't want to exclude anyone. Everyone is welcome because there is a lesson for everyone in the book.
Well, and I would argue we're all in one of those spaces, right? Like I might not be a student because I'm in school right now, but maybe I'm studying leadership, right? That makes me a student. And then everybody else falls somewhere in those other categories. So I love that you captured all of them and that you were thoughtful about this book could be for any of these groups and there's power in all of them. So I have to pivot a little because it is so clear that you know your stuff and you know your stuff really, really well. And that means that you've worked with leaders all over the world and have been one yourself, and you've done a lot of things. And I want to know if you had to define productive joy, since that's the name of this podcast, how would you weave that definition into all of the things that you've learned? So what is your definition of productive joy?
First, you have to know what management is, right? Perhaps before defining things, what is management, right? Some say it's an art. I argue it is a craft because an art, you can see a piece of art in whichever form it takes, and you can see beauty without having to explain it. You don't have to give a grade, or you don't have to justify why it's beautiful. It is beautiful to you, and that's all that matters. Management has an objective criteria for evaluation, right? So it becomes a craft. You measure by your effectiveness, your output, and then you're later measured by your efficiency, which is the ratio of inputs to output. But if you're only grinding the numbers and you're only trying to be productive and all that, how does it make you different from a machine? You have to have that sense of fulfillment, that sense of purpose. What am I building? Does it mean something to me? Does it mean something to someone who will be using the product, right? Driving that fulfillment from what you do, that brings the joy to the work. That brings meaning. That brings fulfillment, right? Different people are in different phases of their lives, and I don't want to judge anyone or say, don't do this or do that. But sometimes we are working on a job because, I'm just hypothetically speaking over here, it's not the best job in the world, but someone has a new child and he has to provide for the child, and you do what you have to do. But over the long run, you should start evaluating is there something I can do about this situation? What are the steps I can take to work with something that speaks more to me? It doesn't mean that that job that you are that doesn't speak to you wouldn't speak to someone else, because we all have our callings, right? Each one of us are attracted to different things and have different interests. One of the purpose of life, and this we may go into some cheap philosophy over here, but there's an author called Viktor Frankl. He survived World War II. He was a prisoner of war, and he wrote a phenomenal book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. I would highly recommend this book to everyone. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And it takes you in a roller coaster of emotions, but it ends on an up note. But be aware that you will go in a roller coaster of emotions with very high peaks, very low drops, but you're going to come out of on the other side better off than when you started. Anyway, but Viktor Frankl argues that the meaning of life is for you to give it meaning. But you can only give meaning if you know what is meaningful to you, right? You have to find what speaks to you, what is your mission, what is the stuff that brings you joy.
Yeah.
And find a way to insert yourself in that universe.
I think that's powerful, Dalmo. And what I wrote down just now was meaning of life is to give it meaning. And I think so I've been doing this for a while now. I think I'm up to about 260 episodes or something. And I keep asking this question. Thank you. I keep asking this question and I keep getting different answers. And I believe that is by design, not by default. And what you just said about everybody has to determine it for themselves is the exact reason for that. What's productive joy to you and what's productive joy to me don't need to look exactly the same. But if I don't ever take the time to define it for myself, I'm chasing something I can't ever catch. So it's more about knowing what is it that I'm trying to get out of life, right? And then how can I get after that? And what you said about management is so true. How do I define it, right? Am I managing myself? Am I managing others? What does that look like? So you just gave a very powerful, very philosophical answer that also brought us to Viktor Frankl. So, I mean, it can't be bad, right? It's all good things, all good things. Well, and so here's the harder part. So you defined it beautifully and you explained what it means to you. How do you help people create it? How do you help people create productive joy? I
think you are the expert in that area, right?
Well, maybe, but I think you do it all the time. And I think your book helps people do it too.
Yes. So let me try to answer your question without embarrassing myself
There's
too
no
much.
wrong answers. No
I'm
wrong
talking
answers.
to the expert over here. Yeah. So when you or your company or the project you're working on, and there's a team around you and everyone is going in that direction, there are two needs that needs to be considered.
Mm,
One, let's talk about the company, but the company encompasses the project and customers and everything that needs to be done. And then you have the individuals on the team, right? Both will have needs. The company needs the product done in a certain way by a certain time to address certain customers. So there will be, imagine a circle that contains all of those requirements. Now the person has their own circle of the things that brings me joy. What do I want from life? What kind of compensation I want? What kind of fulfillment I want from delivering products or shipping services and all that. So now we have two distinct circles over here. And in the ideal situation, those circles overlap most of it,
right.
right? You have
Right.
like 99+% of overlap. That would be the ideal
I
scenario.
was going to say, in a perfect world.
In a perfect world, right? In reality, it doesn't work like that. You have less of an overlap, but you have to have enough overlap. I don't know what the exact threshold is, but there is a threshold where once the overlap crosses beyond that threshold, the company gets what it wants, the employee and the people on the team gets the fulfillment that they're looking for, right? And of course, they will have some suggestions, some ways to improve, and that's part of life.
Right.
But it goes after it overlaps, after those thresholds are crossed, and you pretty much they have alignment, right? I think it's a long way to describe that both the company and the people who make the company are in alignment on what you need to do. I think there's a lot of joy, fulfillment, and purpose that is derived from that alignment.
Absolutely, Demo. And you gave a beautiful explanation. And I think ultimately that boils down to knowing your people enough to put them in situations where that threshold will be crossed. Because if you've put somebody in a position that they are not wired to be in, no amount of reading or shifting is going to make that threshold shift. And so it's really about recognizing, okay, does this fit my talents? Am I in the right place? And if I'm not, why not? And what can I do about it? What I love about your book, though, is it takes people who do have the ability, but not the tools, right? Like, I know I can do this. I just don't have all of the skills I need in order to do it today. And it gives them very practical, open on your desk kind of fixes to those problems. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I am so grateful for people like you who've lived it and then wrote about it so that I don't have to both live it and write about it. I can read it and learn from you. That's wonderful. So, if you had to give a piece of advice to all of the leaders listening, what's the number one thing that you would tell them? I know that's a hard question because there's lots of things that you could tell them, but what's the one thing that you think they either miss or can't not do?
Let's start by building a case. I will answer your exact question, but I want to build a case to get to that answer because
Okay.
it may become self-evident, right? There are many methodologies for managing a project. We all know of waterfall, and there's agile, and there's scrum, and many flavors out there. And sometimes there is a war in saying this one is better and that one is better and this and that. But we are starting from the wrong place, right? It's not about the methodology. Do we need even understand why the methodologies exist? right? Why are they in place? Why did someone propose something like this? Which takes us to imagining yourself driving a car, either on a highway or on city traffic. You know you're not going on a straight line, even around the curves. You are constantly correcting, right? You have those micro movements you make on the steering wheel to keep the car within the lane. The same thing when you fly an airplane or you're piloting a boat, you are constantly correcting.
Yeah.
Why? Because you see the car diverging and you have that feedback from the road, the car's moving, then I error correct. So the dynamic over there is having a feedback loop and the error correction. So when you're dealing about a project, for example, those methodologies are in place to ensure that there is a mechanism of feedback loop, because without a feedback loop, there is no error correction.
So true. And you get way off real fast.
Exactly. And knowing the explanatory knowledge for why you're doing something, why are you adopting a methodology, why does this task need to be done? You can't apply this to everything in life because it's too time consuming. You need shortcuts of saying, okay, 2 + 2 = 4, just take it for granted and run with it. Other things in life, the key elements of your job, and you will know better because you are the ones doing the job. Try to understand why things are done the way they are. What is the explanation for that? Once you understand it, now you can work with Scrum or Agile, Waterfall, or in other situations, you can see the reason for something or process to be in place because you understand the why.
Yeah.
So it brings to the answer to your question, which is 2 words: explanatory knowledge.
Explanatory knowledge, understanding your why. I think that you and Simon Sinek would both agree that that is a very important thing to do. Have you read Start With Why? That's his book.
I do. It's a fantastic book. Don't get me wrong. The why is a necessary condition, but by no means it's enough.
Right. No.
And start with why, but
then you have to keep going. And I think that's really what I have appreciated about you, Dalmo, is that you get it. You don't get it on this surface level. You get it like 7 layers down, and you have figured out ways to explain it to people so that they can digest it and understand it, whether they're a student or a long-term, manager of managers. And I think it's a pretty impressive thing to have been able to turn that into something clear and usable. So well done. I'm curious how people would find you. What's the best way for our listeners to get a hold of this book and put it on their desk so that they have all the answers right there?
So here's my invitation to you and to all your listeners, everyone listening to this episode. Come to my website, dalmocirne.com. It's spelled DALMOCIRNE.com. There you will find links to buy the book, The 4 Streams of Leadership. You will find several essays and articles I have published. You will find a calendar where you can schedule a time to speak with me. You may have a question. You may want to continue this conversation. Just schedule a conversation. I would love to speak with everyone. If you don't feel like scheduling a conversation, that you want to take baby steps, there is a place for you to send me a message. I reply to all messages. And there are links for my social networks, right? You can find me pretty much everywhere where there's a social network. You can find me there, and you find on the website. So that's the invitation for everyone. Come to the website. It's the best place for you to start and branch from there.
I love it. Perfect. Well, thank you. And I know people are going to go look, and we will put all of that in the show notes as well. But I know that people will only listen for a short amount of time before they've moved on. So I have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. First question. What is your definition of fun?
did you get what you want out of it? Right?
Oh.
You know, um, yeah, if you went for, I don't know, a concert or you went to dinner, did you get what you want out of that? If you did, you had fun doing it.
I love it. Great answer. How do you know that you are showing up as your authentic self?
Mark Twain, he people claim that he said that. So I'm going to repeat as if it was true. I can't verify, but I'm just trusting that it is true. He said, always tell the truth. And the reason for that is you don't have to remember which version of the story you told whom.
Yeah, that's so true.
All right. You don't have to remember. So if you don't have to remember which version of yourself you were playing, you're being authentic.
Yeah.
Because that's who you are. So just be yourself. And if you don't have to remember, you are authentic.
And then you accomplished it. I love that. How do you channel your best self on your worst days?
People say that wisdom comes with age, and I think this is the second time I mentioned this saying over here. But there is a very important thing, and I mentioned that in the book, is the space between your emotional reaction and your external response. We tend to compress that and put as one event, but they are not. They are two distinct events. And with time, you will learn how to manage and how to own the gap between your response, your reaction, and your response. The more you can own that gap, the better you become, your quality of life becomes, right? So to answer your question is learn how to own that gap and choose how you respond to your reaction.
Powerful words, sir. You've said lots of powerful words. And so this last question might be a tough question because there are so many things that you could talk about. But by nature, people can only hold on to one major idea in a 30-minute time span. So if you had to choose, what's the one major thing that you want to leave people with today?
We discussed that. It would be explanatory knowledge. Is for the key things in your life, understand why is in the layer beneath. Why is a process in place? Why something is done the way it is? Not for everything in your life, but for the key things that make a difference. Dig deeper, understand why, and you will be better off. Because even if you want to refactor that process, propose a new solution, or even do things differently, without that understanding, you will not be able to enact change. So one, you're either going to become more productive because you understand why, or you will be able to be an agent of change and make things better because you came up with a better way of doing that, right? So explanatory knowledge is the thing to take to the bank.
Love it. Well, thank you, Dalmo, for choosing to share some explanatory knowledge on productive joy and for choosing to be our guest today. It was a genuine honor to get to speak with you.
This was a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate the invitation to be here, Christie.
Yay! And listeners, as always, it's wonderful to listen, but now you need to do something. You have to take something that you've heard Dalmo say and use it, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. So pick something that you're going to do. Maybe you're going to go get the book. Maybe you are going to just explore explanatory knowledge a little deeper. Or maybe you're just going to be a better leader because you realize that there are 4 different streams to leadership. It can go down, it can go up, it can go to the side, or it can be in the reservoir of you. So today and every day, I need you to grab that nugget of wisdom, figure out what you're going to do with it, and then turn fun into action.